So first thing I have to say is I work for Tamedia, which basically is a subsidy of TX Group and is concerned with all the paid media. 20 Minutes is another subsidy, so nowadays we're separated from them. So our main goal, our primary North Star goal basically is selling subscription and establishing a sustainable business model with paid digital media, basically. Today I'm going to talk about automated journalism, tell you what that is. Before I do that, I would like to quickly say that automated journalism, or the automatic generation of journalistic content, is only one small little part of our ecosystem where automation and machine learning and AI, etc., plays an important role. So one area is, let me quickly turn on the laser pointer. One area is sourcing, and that's where we also have, where we actually developed our own software. I'm not going to be talking about this today, but it's basically about crawling a lot of websites continuously, let's say every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes for new information, and then sourcing that data, these documents, into a huge database, which itself then lends to be a powerful search engine that also let our journalists search the deep web, basically. For example, federal court rulings. It's quite hard to find them via Google. They're not indexed. So in our sourcing system, they're drawn in and then they can be searched by the journalists via keywords, etc. Or we can also continuously monitor data sets. And as soon as there's like an anomaly in statistics, for example, let's say in the unemployment rate for some areas of Switzerland, for example, our journalists get alerted, for example, via Slack, and then they can investigate, and then they can write their stories on that topic. And maybe the algorithm already prepares some sort of a template text for them, where they only have to, so where they already have the most important figures in that text, and then they only have to get some quotes, verify the claims, and then publish it. So that already goes a bit into the direction of automated journalism. One other field that's important is this whole productivity topic. Basically, we have a lot of tools that provide our journalists functions such as image recommendation. So you can upload an image and you get similar images because you want to have some variety in the teaser images you use. Or for our readers, if we have, so there's a story about a certain topic, and then at the end of the article, we have these related articles. And of course, we can recommend them either based on similarity to the topic, or based on some sort of a collaborative filtering, like something like readers who read this also read this. So there's a lot of these little helpers in use already at Tamedia. But as I said, today I'm going to talk about automated journalism, and that's mostly about natural language generation, but also you can say automated charts generation. I'll show you an example in a bit, is also some sort of automated journalism. And this all lends to personalization, because then you can write articles for every municipality, for every age group, gender, whatnot. So it's just a way basically to scale journalism through automation. And only that scalability actually allows then for personalization. And yeah, something like automated video generation is probably the sound of the future, although it's already today there's software that automatically cuts together different scenes and has helps journalists in preparing a video, but then of course journalists usually need to do the fine-tuning and final production. So what's automated journalism? Basically, in a definition, and that's not an official or a scientific definition, that's just something I came up with, but I think it makes sense. So I would call it the automatic creation of journalistic content, mainly text and graphics, from structured data. And the structured is really important. So usually we're talking about tabular data. So it needs to follow a well-defined form. And, you know, automated journalism has been a topic around the world since a few years. There's this seminal article from the New York Times called The Rise of the Robot Reporter, which is, yeah, there's a nice illustration as well. And of course, well, you know, the English-speaking countries like USA, but also the United Kingdom, they're of course ahead, as always. They've been doing that for quite some years. The Associated Press, for example, which is, I guess, the biggest news agency in the world, or at least in the USA, maybe apart from Reuters, covers company earnings reports, covers like basketball or baseball, minor league and college game stories, etc., etc. And they've been doing that for quite some time. Also, the Washington Post has already covered the Summer Olympic Games in 2016 with automatically generated text. So that's really not something new. What do we do? Here's an example in terms of chart generation, basically. So we have this dashboard, this COVID-19 dashboard. It's our most read article ever. So we basically have millions and millions of page views there. And we have a lot of different data sets that we draw in. So, and that get, you know, continuously updated at least once a day. And actually in the beginning, let's say that when was that, in March 2020, our journalists did a lot of, you know, data crunching and data collection on their own, because the data sources were not really available at this time. They were not really clean. There was a big mess between cantonal authorities and the Federal Office of Public Health. But nowadays, a lot of these data are provided via APIs, luckily. So I would say almost 100% of this COVID dashboard is now fully automated. And I would call that, even though it's basically it's only charts, I would call that a form of automated journalism. I'll show you some other examples. One example is local soccer reports. That has just started again because the season started mid of August. And what we do is basically, so you'll see a link in a bit, so you can explore that on your own. But basically, you can search for your favorite team, and we have the third league, we have the second league, and the third league. And I'm not a soccer guy, so it took some time for me to actually understand what these different leagues mean and how they play together. But basically, we're covering the most important amateur leagues, to say so, and we can expand that. We can scale that down to the fourth and fifth league, or we can scale it upwards to amateur league and first league and promotion league and so forth. So it's really easy to scale. And what we do there is basically we crawl the website of the Swiss Football Association of these different regions in Bern, Basel, Zurich, etc. And we scrape it basically, and they're aware of that. So they know we're scraping them. They don't have an API, so we're in contact with them. They actually tell us, they're as nice as telling us that if they change something on their website, they give us like an advance warning, and then we can adapt our scraper. But still, you know, it's scraping, so it's kind of error prone. So this project is basically still in beta phase, and our long-term goal is to have established some sort of a better relationship with them so they can provide us with an API. but basically everything from data collection on these report pages to text generation to serving to the front end that you just saw is fully automated. But we have a back end where we have some like a crude back end where we can directly access the database and, alter the text. We could insert quotes by trainers or special events like, when there was like a fight on the court, whatever, these things happen, I hear. So we could modify these texts and then republish them, or we could manually fix some problems if there are. And in this example, we don't do the text generation ourselves. We basically only collect the data, clean them, and store them in a data model, and then we send them to a German company called Retresco, and they're specialized on sports reports, and they generate the texts for us. As said, you can have a look at that under this link. I think the slides will be shared later on, or at least they can be shared. So you can have a look at that later on. Another important project for us is vote results. As you know, we're really keen on voting in Switzerland, and this has always been a good use case for automation, that we can provide these vote results on the federal, cantonal, and now more and more on the communal level for all municipalities. So all municipalities are available. There's data on all these municipalities from the Federal Office of Statistics, and that's actually, it's a file, but it's well documented. It never changes. It's some sort of an API. So we download that file like every 15 minutes on a voting day, and then we continuously send these data that we cleaned and prepared. We send them to a text template engine, and then the text gets generated and sent to our front end. And the text template engine we use is, in this case, it's a tool. It's called Wordsmith, where you can basically define your rule-based text template, and you can also there's a couple of features, and it has a pretty good usability, but it's still a lot of manual work, still a lot of repetition, also error-prone work. So we're looking into making this better. The last example, and that's also made with Wordsmith, are basically articles that show Corona situations in different cantons. So we have these articles for all cantons where we have newspapers basically, and people can have a look there and basically get this automatically generated text and the current rules that are in place in the canton. And this was more interesting a couple of months ago, when every canton had its own rules. Nowadays, with federally consistent rules, in my eyes, hopefully federally consistent rules, or luckily, this article is not needed that much. But something that is also generated on a daily basis is an editorial with the latest figures on the federal level, and that is sent out with a newsletter we send out every day. To sum it up, there are some pain points with this templated natural language generation. So there's no machine learning involved. I'll come to that in a second. The problem is that the software you can get, if you don't want to implement it yourself, which I advise, because that would be hugely complicated, I think. So you end up using tools, but most of these tools are optimized for English. And there's like one open source software is called Simple NLG, and that would support you in implementing your own engine basically. It's written in Java, so that's, for me personally, I'm rather a Python guy, so that's a bit of a downside. And they actually have a German version, but I haven't really looked into it. So these templated NLG tools, they still involve a lot of micromanagement in terms of, are you using the singular form or the plural form, different inflections, which are a big thing in German, but maybe not in English. And now we're currently evaluating some alternatives. There's text engine from this German company, Retresco, that provides the football text for us. There's also ARIA NLG, which I guess is the biggest player in the field. And they also continuously update their product, and it seems to be a bit more powerful than the rest of them. What has it got to do with machine learning? Because we're at the applied machine learning days. Not much. It's all rule-based. It's all pretty, simple. But anyway, we certainly hope that it will become better integrated into these tools, and not just for English, but also for German, to assist with automatic inflection of words, especially, as I said, with German and French, not with English, because there it's not really needed. Machine translation should become better, so we can define a template in German, and then we automatically have a template in French. That would be nice. And also stuff like suggestion of synonyms to introduce some variability in the text. I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna skip the tech stack, but to answer the question, or to at least give you some answer to what Christina teased before. Are robots taking over the job of journalists? This is actually from a guide to automated journalism that was released in 2016, and it basically says, automated journalism will only replace journalists who really cover routine topics like these lower league games, or daily corona figures, basically, because all of that can be automated. But a lot of stuff like analysis, interviewing, investigations, etc., this won't be able to be automated in the near and also far future. Algorithms can only support there. So that's where we come to the man-machine marriage. I think will become more and more important. So the answer basically is not a no and not a yes. It's rather a yo with an emphasis on no. So that's been my talk. Thanks for your questions and your interest.
Timo, thanks for demystifying automation in content generation. Basically, the way I see it, right, our job is to, on one hand, free up the journalists, right, from the boring, repetitive tasks that today they do, and I imagine would not necessarily are not their favorites. And then the other dimension is kind of empowering them with information and with data, either in the topic search phase or at the end in the distribution phase, especially when we are talking about the online channels. That can definitely be optimized and personalized. One question that I was thinking about: have you already experimented with generating basically different versions of this automated content for different audiences? So I'm thinking of something super simple. For example, having a short, more mobile version for the app versus a longer, let's say, with longer paragraphs and so on for the desktop. Have you looked into that, and whether you can get some uplift there?
Actually not. I mean, that would certainly be something to try out, to have different versions for mobile and desktop. The assumption would be that on mobile people maybe have less time, so they like shorter texts. We haven't looked into that. The reason is simple, and that's also related to what Tim asked in the Q&A. What are the next promising fields for automation in journalism? And the reason we're not, fine-tuning our stuff and doing like A/B testing and so forth is that there's there's so many fields to explore. We've only covered soccer and these votes, and there's so much more to do, and also a lot of stuff that you can do that does not get served to the end reader, to the end user. That only gets served to our own editors, to our journalists, to support their work. As I said in the beginning, for example, unemployment rates, anomaly detection, and then a text gets written automatically, pushed via Slack message, and then the journalists just have to copy paste, and it takes them hours to actually compile useful data and get it right and write it into a written, bring it into a written form, and all of that basically can be automated. And I think there's a huge potential. So before I go into fine-tuning different stuff, I'd rather try out as much as possible with such approaches.
Okay, so as I understand you, you are now, next steps would be to look at other automation use cases within the internal processes, like the one you just mentioned.
That's one thing, and just shortly, the other thing, we also were working on a more a better access for our readers to very hyper-local content. So basically, the long-term vision is that the reader can choose his or her municipality and then gets a selection, a feed of conventionally written articles, conventional reports, but also more and more automatically written articles. Because in Switzerland, we have so many statistics released from the federal government, but on the municipal level. So there's so much where you can compare your municipality to the neighbors, to the canton, to the district. And I think people are really interested in that, comparing each other to other people. So I think there's also a big potential there. And that's not constrained to one topic. You can have a lot of different topics on every aspect of life, right?
Yeah.